Return of the Jedi isn't the worst Star Wars movie. Following the greatest Star Wars movie was a hard ask. The Jedi does its job. The Skywalker saga is closed, and should have stayed closed, and the rebellion against the Empire is victorious. Emperor Palpatine corrupted the galaxy, destroyed the Jedi, and pulled down the Republic, with the wrinkly old codger dead. No, he's dead. This never happened. The galaxy is all good again, and everyone can party on. Because Return of the Jedi is Star Wars for children, but Andor is Star Wars for grown-ups.
Our overriding mandate for everything is to make it real. Real, real, real wherever we go. Disney and Lucasfilm really, they kept saying they wanted to do something really ambitious and really different. And, we kept challenging them, and there's a lot of foreplay that goes in before you're actually fully committed on both sides. So we just kept pushing and pushing. Oh, we want the production designer from Chernobyl, and we want to do that first scene, and we want to do this. And they just kept stepping up and saying yes, and we kept doing our job.
Han Solo would never execute a man in a dirty back alley, but Cassian Andor does it a lot. This is how you know Andor isn't a kid show. Andor is the start of the rebellion that ends in Return of the Jedi. We get to meet iconic characters like Mon Mothma, who launched the rebellion. But Andor isn't about Easter eggs and fan service. Instead, showrunner Tony Gilroy kept pushing Disney until they let him do the unthinkable. Make Star Wars for grown-ups that shows not a fantasy rebellion against evil, but the true dark reality of a real political revolution.
This, alongside sort of Rogue One, was such a political movie, this political series, dressed up obviously in a big kind of sci-fi fantasy.
If you're doing fantasy or science fiction, you have the whole encyclopedia of all history. I get to cherry pick from every revolution. We can be with the French Resistance, or we could be with Boudica, or we can be in Toussaint in the Haitian Revolution. You could do anything.
It's no coincidence that Andor Season 2 drops on April 22, the birthday of Vladimir Lenin, history's most famous Marxist revolutionary. And the Season 2 trailer music is The Revolution Starts Now by borderline Marxist Steve Earle. That's a big red communist star on the album art. Showrunner Tony Gilroy wanted to make Star Wars real, so based it on real revolutionaries. And the big revolutions of the 20th century were Marxist. Andor was inspired by Tony Gilroy listening to the Revolutions podcast on the Bolshevik Revolution and reading Simon Sebag Montefiore's biography of young Stalin. Diego Luna's similarity to young Joseph Stalin was emphasized, and events from Stalin's life, including robberies and prison stints, shaped Season 1. The revolutionary writings of Leon Trotsky even inspired Nemec's political manifesto. Andor Season 1 closely mirrors the revolutionary critique of Karl Marx, and Season 2 looks to be doubling down on the Marxism. But Marxist revolutions aren't fought only against an evil emperor out there somewhere. Marxist revolution is fought against the entire system of capitalism right here, and that's against us.
Let the hate flow through you.
Here's a question. Does anything actually get any better after the death of Emperor Palpatine? Tatooine is run by gangsters before the Empire, and it's still run by gangsters after the Empire. The Jedi are a warrior elite who conduct extrajudicial executions with laser swords, both before and after the Empire. Andor shows us that the Star Wars galaxy was just as grim before the Empire. Cassian's tribe are destroyed not by the Empire, but under the rule of the Republic. Ferrix was a grimy industrial planet where humans worked long shifts of manual labor for low pay long before the Empire.
We should be charging them. What they stick you to park your ship?
60 credits.
Gutty, aren't they? Charging us to come and spend our money. They get you coming and going.
I love this scene in season 1 because it really shows the insane hyper-capitalism of Ferrix and Star Wars, with humanity still wasting our time chasing spare parts while building superweapons. While old families, super wealthy elites and criminal cartels live in elite luxury and only care about the Empire because it limits their power and privileges. Andor shows us the stark class divides in the Star Wars universe to show us that, long before the tyrant Emperor, the Republic was already a corrupt oligarchy. If the Republic was ever a true republic, it's long since fallen.
And what do you sacrifice?
I've given up all chance at inner peace. I made my mind a sunless space. I wake up every day to an equation I wrote 15 years ago from which there's only one conclusion. I'm damned for what I do. My anger, my ego, my unwillingness to yield, my eagerness to fight. I yearn to be a savior against injustice without contemplating the cost. So what do I sacrifice? Everything!
Luthen Rael's revolution isn't the rebellion we see in the Star Wars movies. Andor shows us the aristocrats Mon Mothma and Val Sartha who raised the rebellion to win back their wealth and privilege. But Luthen is only using their rebellion for his revolution. And Cassian Andor doesn't care about a rebellion against the Empire. When he joins Luthen at the end of season 1, it's to fight for a true revolution, because Andor is not a rebellion against the Empire. But to understand what it is, we need to go to prison. Eat, work, sleep, repeat. 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 If this routine feels familiar to you, it might be because it is. Andor is Star Wars for grown-ups. Before Andor, Star Wars was fairy tales for kids in a galaxy far, far away with a heroic rebellion against a cartoonishly evil empire. After Andor, Star Wars is an adult depiction of real political rebellion, the very real costs paid by those rebels, and the grinding oppressive empire that is the face of real evil. It's not just me. I've spoken to a lot of people who are still having nightmares about Narkina 5. Not just the terror of a well-told horror story. This is real terror. Watching episodes 8, 9 and 10 of Andor made many of us feel like something is terrifyingly wrong with our real world, where we work.
This is an Imperial factory facility. You've all been assessed as label-worthy.
Narkina 5 depicts a high-security prison that uses its inmates as forced labor. Cassian Andor is sent to Narkina 5, ironically not for the real heist he pulled off against the Empire, but for a trumped-up misdemeanor.
6 years.
6 years?
So we know from the beginning that the inmates in this prison don't necessarily deserve to be there.
So what did you do?
Nothing.
Not like that lately.
Every single moment of inmate life in the prison is controlled. An electric floor is used for punishment. Inmate cells are clean but inhumanly bare. Even the food is flavorless. Inmates are compelled to work on a factory production line producing an unspecified industrial item. Inmate teams compete against the clock. Losers get shocked. Winners get flavor in their food.
Top table wins flavor. Last place
You can check out of Narkina 5 anytime you like, but you can only leave in a body bag. Inmates believe they are serving a sentence, but in fact nobody is ever allowed to leave Narkina 5 alive. But inmates can step from their cell at any time onto the electric floor in lethal mode. This is important. For Narkina 5 to work, the inmates must have some element of volition in their own discipline, however minimal. To understand why this scenario is so terrifying, we need to start with a small shift in perception. Narkina 5 isn't a prison where prisoners are punished with labour. Narkina 5 is a workplace where the workers are disciplined like prisoners. Andor is based on one of the most undeniably important and violent rebellions in history, the Bolshevik Revolution against the imperial regime of 1917 to 1923. A revolution that wasn't for Jedi or Sith, but over much more ordinary questions, like the right to finish work at 5 p.m, or weekends off, or who owns the means of production. And Narkina 5 is a picture of the brutal factories and prisons that the Russians were rebelling against. Andor's time in Narkina 5 mirrors the young Stalin's time in the Tsarist gulags of Siberia. The Gulag was made famous by Alexander Solzhenitsyn in his novel The Gulag Archipelago, but the system of Siberian prisons were actually built by the Russian imperial regime of the 1700s. Both the Tsars and then the Soviets used the Gulag to oppress their political opponents. These were not normal prisons designed to contain the violent, but institutions designed to exert complete control over and break the individual. And one of the individuals responsible for inventing those systems was Jeremy Bentham. There's a strong case for Jeremy Bentham being one of the worst people ever. Bentham is famous today as a philosopher, social reformer, and father of utilitarianism, the moral philosophy that gave us effective altruism, the preferred philosophy of Sam Bankman-Fried, and many other Silicon Valley hucksters. But Bentham is famous for his panopticon, a special prison designed to allow just one guard to control an entire population of prisoners. The panopticon's famous circular design is actually secondary to its purpose. Central to the panopticon design is a psychological principle that to be kept under control, people don't need to be constantly observed. They only need to believe observation is possible at any time. Think of the panopticon as the evil eye of Sauron or of Big Brother, constantly watching you. Two of the greatest symbols of pure evil ever imagined, and it's possible both Tolkien and Orwell had Bentham in mind when considering evil. Bentham's panopticon was inspired by 2 years spent with his brother, a factory owner, in Russia. Factories in this early stage of the Industrial Revolution had a problem. They had to employ almost as many supervisors to watch the workers as they employed workers. And persuading people to work in the factories at all was a struggle. For capitalism to profit, it needed a way to get people working. Bentham's ideas of a surveillance state were to be tested on prisoners, but the panopticon's true purpose was to discipline workers in factories and beyond. Bentham remained largely unknown in his lifetime and was bitter until his death that his panopticon ideas were never inflicted on real people. Well, f*** you, Jeremy Bentham. But while his prison was never built, Bentham's ideas lived on.
They make a sound as they die, a sort of choral, agonized pleading.
At the heart of the terror that Narkina 5 creates is a question. Are you free? Are you a member of a free society and free to pursue life, liberty, and the capitalist dream? Or are you controlled by unseen systems of discipline? The Imperial forces in Star Wars aren't beyond blowing up a planet, but they prefer more civilized means of coercion. Electrocution is so barbarous. when you can just play the looped screams of dying alien children. Or a prison where never more than 12 guards are on duty. Jeremy Bentham and those who followed him believed his panopticon was to be a reform of the penal system. Systems that had relied on brutal punishments, floggings, beatings, even executions to control inmates, could instead discipline inmates with the non-violent surveillance systems of Bentham's panopticon. And those systems could extend far beyond the jail. Bentham's panopticon inspired generations of liberal social reforms that made society less callous and brutal, but no less controlling. Schools provided universal education, but the school system, with its regime of uniforms, bells, and tests, conditioned young people for the workplace. Social welfare, pensions, and healthcare costs tied workers to their employers. Mortgages, student loans, and consumer debt created a framework of financial controls over the individual. Crucially, where medieval feudal systems of control were theatrical and public rituals, modern systems are frequently invisible to their participants. The medieval feudal serf knows he is not free. The modern worker believes he might be free. This is the critique of the liberal economic system made by the French philosopher Michel Foucault in 1975 in his most famous book. Discipline and Punish, The Birth of the Prison details how the modern prison system replaced medieval feudal systems of punishment with modern systems of discipline. Michel Foucault is an elusive philosopher, a Marxist in his youth, a postmodernist who rejected the label of postmodernism. Foucault's central interest was power, and how in modern democratic industrial societies, power is wielded subtly and sometimes invisibly. Employing Bentham's panopticon as his metaphor, Foucault then extends his analysis from prisons to other institutions, hospitals, mental asylums, schools, and more, to show how systems of panopticon control impose discipline across the population of an entire society. The purpose of such discipline, Foucault argues, is to create docile bodies, humans conditioned from school onwards to be subjected, used, transferred, and improved to the needs of industry. Whether those are the bureaucratic systems of administration or a factory making parts for the Death Star. Narkina 5 embodies the panopticon principle of Jeremy Bentham. All spaces are open and constantly monitored. At least the prisoners believe they are observed, not realizing that only a small number of guards control the entire complex.
I think they care what we say. Nobody's listening. Nobody.
If you've ever felt uncomfortably exposed in your cool, funky, open-plan office, it's because this workplace design actively exploits the panopticon principle. But it's not the guards who are watching you. The primary method of enforcement in Narkina 5 comes not from the guards, but from the inmates. Foucault observes that power is internalized, that the individual is psychologically pressured to conform by the judgment of their peers. If your workday finishes at 5:30 but you routinely stay until 6, it's probably not because your boss tells you to. It's the unspoken judgment of your teammates. The systems of Narkina 5, the electric floor punishments, the Spartan conditions, punishing routine, endless deadlines, and constant assessment all serve one powerful purpose.
You play against all the other tables in this room. I play against all the other rooms.
The first mistake workers make is to believe that long hours and tight deadlines, the constant stress of a workplace, are a product of the work, a bug in the system. But the stress of work is a feature, not a bug, a deliberate design choice of many modern workplaces. It's by placing the individual into a permanent state of low-grade depression that they are kept working. It's the despairing soul that is the prison of the body. It's these soul-destroying systems of control that the Marxist is truly a revolutionary against. The despair they induce, Karl Marx called alienation. Cassian Andor is a perfect portrait of the alienated individual and the Marxist revolutionary. Because he is already alienated, Cassian is immune to the psychological despair machine of Narkina 5, and his arrival begins the liberation of the prison.
Losing hope, your mind, keep it to yourself. Don't ever slow up.
So the true terror of Narkina 5 is revealed in the character arc of Kino Loy, played by Andy Serkis, whose beautifully expressive features reveal the character's inner transformation from docile body to awakened individual.
There is one way out. Right now. The building is ours.
Kino is the everyman who believes in the system. He has learned to comply to one system of power after another. By complying, he has been granted a special position in Narkina 5 that gives Kino the illusion of power. If you've ever been line managed by a middle-aged chap who has been working at the same mall retail outlet for 20 years and has every star in his staff badge, you know who Kino Loy is. Kino's speech doesn't actually contain the words "workers of the world unite," but it exemplifies the Marxist principle of collective action in the face of unjust power.
Can't swim.
Kino Loy's final line is a brutal reflection on the cost of conforming to systems of power. Even when the chance for freedom appears, the human conditioned by external power structures cannot or will not take it.
Play it how you want. But I'm gonna assume I'm already dead.
Narkina 5 is so terrifying because it isn't about a galaxy far, far away. It's about the systems of power we live within, day in and day out. As you watch the drama of Narkina 5, you fear that this is where you live, this is where you work, and this is you. Of course, the Narkina 5 installation didn't just poof magic into being when the Empire arose. The systems of power used in Narkina 5 were all researched and developed under the Republic. Andor Season 1 challenged us to think about the reality of political revolution. The immature idea we see in Star Wars for kids is that rebellions are fought against evil people who have corrupted the Republic. We see this idea today among many liberals who think an authoritarian leader like Donald Trump is the cause rather than a symptom of democratic decline. The revolution for grown-ups of Andor gives us the mature truth. The Republic is already a corrupt oligarchy, and fascism is implicit in its systems, not just an external evil. Here are 3 predictions for Andor Season 2. The simmering sexual tension between Dedra Meero and Cyril Khan will have severe consequences involving some leather and rather a lot of shame. Uncle Harlow must be Cyril Khan's secret father, an Imperial with connections at the highest level. Get ready for a cameo from Grand Moff Tarkin. Luthen Rael's revolution will reveal itself to have very different aims from Mon Mothma's rebellion, because Andor isn't the story of a rebellion against the Empire. It's the story of a revolution against the Republic.